From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin in Venezuela, where President Nicolas Maduro is preparing to take an oath before the National Constituent Assembly. President Maduro was sworn in for his second term last Thursday before the Supreme Court. This Monday, he will appear before the country's highest body, the Constituent Assembly, to ratify his mandate from 2019 to 2025. He will also lay out his priorities under the Plan de la Patria, the Bolivarian Revolution's strategic program, first drawn up by Hugo Chavez. On Sunday, the president of Venezuela's opposition-controlled National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, was detained by members of the Bolivarian Intelligence Service, who authorities say were acting on their own account. He was released shortly after, and those behind the illegal detention were dismissed from the force. The country's Minister of Communication, Jorge Rodríguez, gave a statement explaining the situation.
We found out about an irregular situation in which a group of state officials acted unilaterally against Representative Juan Guaidó. The issue has been solved. It only served to create the usual media show and the setup of false positives. Those state officials who took part in this circus that endangered the everyday life of citizens have already been dismissed from the force. They are currently being disciplined in the most strict manner. We will find out the real story behind this act.
The communications minister said Ildemaro José Rodríguez Múcura was the person allegedly behind the detention of Guaidó. Rodríguez announced the name in a tweet and also said the man is linked to the country's far-right opposition. He is currently being questioned for his involvement. And following the detention, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza issued a statement condemning what he called the ongoing coup attempts of a supremacist elite controlled by the White House. The Venezuelan government says it believes this was a false flag operation organized by Washington, D.C. as part of its continuous attempts at intervention in Venezuela. Our correspondent in Caracas, Madeleine Garcia, has more.
Reactions continue to pour over Sunday's incident. On the one hand, revolutionary forces have warned that lawmakers Juan Guaidó's illegal detention by intelligence agents acting without official authorization is part of a strategy to increase the popularity of the lawmaker. On the other hand, international attacks continue, and those behind them are taking this opportunity to continue to undermine President Maduro. But let's recall what started this. An irregular incident happened when the president of the opposition-controlled National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, was in a car on the Caracas-La Juaria highway headed for his hometown when he was detained in an odd way by security officials. Shortly after, the communications minister, Jorge Rodríguez, informed the nation that once authorities started to see reactions on social networks used by national and international right-wing to attack the government, they immediately started an investigation into what was happening and discovered that a group of intelligence agents acted of their own accord to stop Guaidó. This situation was swiftly resolved, with Guaidó being released and the responsible agents dismissed from the force. The most strict disciplinary procedures are being applied to them to determine what was the reason for their actions and if this act is linked to the opposition. On top of all that, Guaidó's detention happened just a few hours before President Maduro heads to the National Constituent Assembly to present his government's plan for the next 6 years.
That was Madeleine Garcia from Caracas. In other news, 10 out of 12 countries that underwrote part of a declaration by the so-called Lima Group attacking Venezuela's sovereignty have backtracked on their support for the statement. Let's find out more.
Peace and democracy triumph in Venezuela. That is what Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza said during a news conference, a stage where he used to clarify the anti-meddling stance of the country.
Es importante decir It is important to highlight that to err is human, but it is wise to right our wrongs. And we believe that diplomacy in the region has won out and international law is being respected. Despite our differences and the ongoing attacks against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and its government, politicians have chosen the right path.
Arreaza recalled that the Bolivarian government delivered 11 official complaint letters to the countries that underwrote paragraph 9 of a statement by the so-called Lima Group.
Our complaints were delivered to all governments of the Lima cartel, demanding that they rectify their position towards Venezuela. Within 48 hours, or our government would have been forced to take the most urgent diplomatic actions in defense of our integrity, sovereignty, and dignity.
The political climate has been marked by threats from the United States in the days prior to the presidential swearing-in ceremony for Nicolas Maduro. But international and local support was also present.
Issues in Venezuela are resolved in Venezuela by us, citizens, and we are proof of that. We are here showing the popular force of the people, showing that our president is ratified once more.
A new deadline has been given until Monday for the government of Paraguay and Canada to rectify their positions in favor of international law. The Bolivarian government has assured they will defend self-determination to the end.
The final presidential debate in El Salvador was held on Sunday ahead of the February 3rd elections. Issues debated included crime, the economy and employment, foreign policy, education and health. 3 of the main candidates presented their proposals and even spoke about their positions on foreign policy with respect to relations with the United States. Hugo Martinez, the candidate of the ruling FMLN, spoke after the debate.
I feel very satisfied. I think I clearly demonstrated my proposals. I think I clearly demonstrated my point of view, and I'm personally convinced that, based on what I've heard by phone call, on social media, through messages, I'm convinced that I won this debate. But here the big winner isn't Hugo Martinez, it's the Salvadorian people, because the Salvadorian people were able to see the level of preparation that each of us have.
Our correspondent in San Salvador, Ernesto Ábalos, has the details.
Here in El Salvador, 3 of the 4 candidates for the presidency took part in the second debate, organized by the Association of Salvadoran Radios and some private universities. Carlos Calleja of the Arena Party, Hugo Martinez of the FMLN, and Josué Alvarado of the Vamos Party were those who took part. The main absence was Nayib Bukele of the right-wing Ghana coalition. This is the second time he's declined to participate in a presidential debate. The main topics addressed in this debate were domestic issues like the economy, education, healthcare, and most importantly, the violence that the country is suffering. At the end of the debate, the candidates gave a brief news conference. Hugo Martinez claimed to have won the debate, and Carlos Calleja said he would keep all his campaign promises to different sectors of society. This was the last debate before the elections on the 3rd of February.
That was Ernesto Ábalos from El Salvador. Former left-wing activist Cesare Battisti has been extradited to Italy after Interpol arrested him in Bolivia. Battisti, a former member of the Armed Proletarians for Communism, is wanted for 4 alleged murders during the 1970s. He has denied responsibility for any of the deaths. Battisti was granted refuge status in Brazil by then-President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, which was later revoked by former President Michel Temer. He had been on the run ever since. And the Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini says he is proud of this arrest.
I am proud to wear the jubilee given to me by the men of the state police, because tonight those men arrested Battisti, and therefore it's the least I can do.
More stories coming up. We'll be back. Welcome back. More protests are planned for this Monday in Guatemala against President Jimmy Morales and his decision to shut down a UN anti-corruption mission in the country. Last week, Morales notified the UN that the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala would close early. But the country's constitutional court ordered the government to tell public workers that they must continue to cooperate with the commission. The UN body came under fire from Morales after it sought to investigate him on suspicion of campaign finance violations.
We want to tell the world that Guatemala is living through a crisis generated by the government of Jimmy Morales, by the financial elite and by the military.
People are tired of this. People want to see a government that works for them, that gives them solutions and does not use security forces to intimidate us and to seek impunity.
It has been 2 weeks since Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro took office, but already the far-right leader has rolled out many orders against underprivileged people. Among them is the order to cancel the National Social Housing Program. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Meir, tells us how this is affecting people.
Lizene da Costa is starting her day in one of Sao Paulo's biggest squats.
Here in the city center, we have had some big challenges, because the brutal capitalist system has always seen the center of the city as a part to be preserved and cultivated for the powerful, the bourgeoisie.
The 1988 Brazilian Constitution guarantees the right for poor people to occupy vacant buildings where the owners have failed to pay their real estate taxes. In 2011, the MMC social movement occupied this vacant federal government building, one of around 40 occupied buildings in downtown São Paulo. Lizene da Costa is a manicurist who moved here to be closer to her work. It used to take her 3 hours to commute.
These days it takes me just 10 minutes to walk to work. It's really good living downtown. That's why I live here.
According to Brazilian law, the government has to convert legally occupied buildings into social housing. But now President Jair Bolsonaro has canceled the National Social Housing Program, and his institutional security chief, General Augusto Heleno, says they will begin monitoring social movements.
Bolsonaro has been making constant threats against social movements since he was elected, with the intention of monitoring them and transforming them into criminal organizations.
We have to continue the fight to see what happens. But this government is going to be very difficult. They're not going to pay any attention to the working class.
As budget cutbacks and attacks against the working class social movements increase on all fronts, the 7.7 million Brazilians who are denied decent housing continue to push for their right to the city. Not just to live in cities and access their services, but to change them in the way that best suits their needs, one step at a time. Brian Meir, Telesur, São Paulo.
An assassination attempt against Brazilian Labour Party lawmaker Marta Rocha took place in Rio de Janeiro. Local reports say that a vehicle blocked Rocha's car and at least 4 hitmen exited the vehicle, opening fire on Rocha's car in the historic Peña neighborhood. Political violence has been ramping up since last March, when Rio's municipal council member Mariel Franco was murdered in the city. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has spoken about the difficulties caused by the shortages of fuel in some states. Despite the concerns, he said the government will not give up on its fight against fuel theft and smuggling. Thanking people for their support, he asked them to avoid hoarding fuel in fears of shortages.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, from the bottom of my heart, for supporting us in our fight against fuel theft. The so-called huachicol is illegal, immoral, and an act of corruption that we are dealing with. It's causing a lot of trouble because there will be a temporary disruption in the distribution of fuel. We have enough gasoline and diesel reserves for the country. It's just a matter of changing the distribution system and taking control of pipelines.
A moment of pride for Ecuadorians as local mountaineer Santiago Quintero made it to the top of the Chimborazo volcano. He made the 6,000-meter climb in just 24 hours. Our correspondent Denise Herrera has more.
The 44-year-old Ecuadorian mountaineer has set a new record in his homeland. Chimborazo is the highest mountain in Ecuador and also the highest near the equator. Its location along the equatorial bulge makes its summit the farthest point on the Earth's surface from the Earth's center. The ascent was brutal, but Santiago was able to successfully navigate the rugged terrain.
The project began on December 2nd. We left from Babahoyo at 5 a.m. and arrived at 7 p.m. to the refuge. I did not think it would be so fast. I rested, had some water, and we left again at 11 in the night. We slept for just 1 hour. We climbed 6,000 meters in 24 hours, but by the time we got to 5,900, we had loose snow. Very dangerous. We would have had to return because of risk of avalanches, but we evaluated that we were two and that we could take the risk. We reached the summit at 8 a.m.
Santiago endured 8 months of rigid training to prepare for this ambitious expedition. Every day he would ride his bike for hours. Night training sessions were also part of his routine. It was an exercise in resilience and determination. While training, he failed 4 times before he finally made it to the top.
Climbing has allowed me to exceed not only physical but mental limitations. It was very cold. The journey was difficult. At times during the climb, I would hear a voice in my head saying, "It is complicated, it is complicated." But my personal mantra, "It is easy and it can be done," would drown that potentially destructive voice. I told myself I am in perfect health. I have strength and the will to achieve the goal I set for myself. I discarded all negative thoughts, such as I am tired or my legs hurt. And this is how I reprogrammed my brain in order to push ahead.
In February 2002, Santiago reached the summit of Aconcagua, the Western Hemisphere's highest peak. The ascent was punishing. Half his right foot and the toes of his left would need to be amputated. After intense rehabilitation, he was back at the summit of a mountain. This time, Cotopaxi, the second highest peak in Ecuador.
This project has taken me 10 years to fulfill and has taken me to reach the summit of 8 mountains without using oxygen. So I feel blessed and grateful to God, and I will keep on going.
A Venezuelan doctor has helped create a custom-sized prosthesis and a specially designed shoe for Santiago. The mountaineer helped in the design. They help relieve the pain in his feet and facilitate better mobility. Apart from his raw determination and grit, these are the tools which are essential to his record-breaking mountain climbing success. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. Africa's oldest liberation movement, the African National Congress, celebrated its 107th anniversary in the city of Durban in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa led the celebrations, promising sweeping changes for all. Our special contributor in South Africa, Ayesha Ismail, brings us more.
Thousands of African National Congress members gathered at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban to celebrate the 107th anniversary of the ruling party. President Cyril Ramaphosa also used the occasion to launch the ANC's election manifesto. He said his government would be prioritizing job creation, investment, education and health.
This year, we also celebrate the 25th anniversary of the achievement of democracy. We celebrate 25 years of freedom. We celebrate the fact that South Africa today is a better place, a nation united in its diversity, working together to overcome the injustices of the past. It is a nation that is founded on a democratic and progressive constitution that guarantees equal rights to all our people.
More than 9 million South Africans are unemployed. But President Ramaphosa says working with labor, business and communities will create thousands of new jobs and ensure that workers can earn a decent living. The election manifesto was well received, especially by the ANC's alliance partners.
The alliance has been an integral part and component of the development of the manifesto from all stages. But what one can also say is that This manifesto is a manifesto of the people. There's been an elaborate process to engage with our communities and all various social sectors of our country to develop this manifesto.
While admitting that the ANC-led government had made mistakes, President Ramaphosa called on all South Africans to work together to grow South Africa. Aisha Ismail, Telesu, Durban, South Africa.
A delegation of Iranian lawmakers met with Syrian officials in Damascus on Sunday. The group of parliamentarians are visiting the country to support Iran's ongoing role in reconstruction efforts. This takes place just days after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo threatened to expel all Iranian forces in Syria, as Washington has reportedly begun a troop withdrawal. The Egyptian parliament has extended a state of emergency. This state of emergency was first imposed in 2017 after a bombing at a church. The parliament approved on Sunday a 3-month extension. It said that current security challenges in the country mean that the measure must be kept in place. Demonstrators took to the streets of Khartoum in South Sudan to protest against President Omar al-Bashir and the country's ongoing economic crisis. Fighting eventually broke out after they were confronted by security forces. Protesters braved a heavy police presence, but they were met with tear gas and chased down side streets. In previous demonstrations, police have also used live ammunition against citizens, with international organizations reporting that at least 40 people have died. A government-backed committee claims the death toll stands at 24. Protests started back in December due to a hike in the price of bread, among other economic hardships. The Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sánchez, has claimed that the Socialist Party has done more in 7 months than the government of the PP managed in 7 years.
Spain is tired and exhausted. We don't want more tension and more confrontation. We want ease, coexistence, tolerance, respect and union. After 7 years of social injustice, what Spain demands is social state budget, like what which the government passed last Friday through the Council of Ministers.
Anti-fascists in the Catalan city of L'Hospitalet de Llobregat were met with police brutality when protesting against an event sponsored by the ultra-right-wing Vox party. After moments of tension between the anti-fascists and Vox sympathizers, police charged the protesters using batons. Clashes between supporters of independence from Spain and right-wing groups have increased in Catalonia. Vox did not have municipal permission for their event, which the leader of the Unionist Police for the Constitution group attended. The leader of the French extreme right, Marine Le Pen, launched her election campaign in the European Union this Sunday. She said it was an opportunity to beat Macron and took advantage of the anti-government Yellow Vest movement. Le Pen introduced Jordan Bardella as head of the national regrouping list for the May 26 elections and called on the Yellow Vest demonstrators to see their European Union votes a referendum as to Macron's policies. Both Le Pen and the leftist leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon publicly sympathized with the Yellow Vest movement, which has become a broad campaign demanding more social justice for low-skilled workers left behind by globalization, deregulation, and integration into the EU.
In the context of the healthy popular revolt of Yellow Vest, the coming election offers the opportunity to put an end to this political crisis, as well as the intransigence, class contempt, fiscal robbery, and human disconnection of a disturbed president who is worried about his conduct and competence in office.
The mayor of the Polish city of Gdańsk was stabbed with a knife by a man during a charity event. Paweł Adamowicz was being stabbed in the abdomen and is reported to be in very serious condition. Just before the attack, the assailant allegedly shouted that he was wrongly imprisoned and that he was tortured in prison. He has since been arrested.
I'm shocked. It was a day full of smiles. I was fundraising out on the streets of Warsaw. Everybody was smiling. Everybody had the sticker for the Great Orchestra Christmas charity. I was on stage. I came here. The atmosphere was fantastic. And then, out of the blue, the news broke about the stabbing in Gdansk. I'm shocked. I have no words. My thoughts are now with Pavel Adamowicz and his family.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But these and other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria, and we're on social media as well. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.